Good afternoon, judges and esteemed members of the board. My name is Nicholas Hang, and these are my colleagues Devin Sanin, Poonsak Sinthawat, and Shilpa Cannon. And we're here on behalf of Team International to present to you our strategy for McKesson moving forward. Now, to identify the scope a little bit, we are going to be focusing on the HAS division in Canada for McKesson. And to dive right into it, our strategy will enable McKesson to reach double-digit growth by the year 2020 through capitalizing on market trends as well as mitigating partnership risk. And we have to take into consideration things that we identified, such as an unclear future with Ascent, because they are owned by private equity firm Francisco Partners. Secondly, the underpenetration of Western Canada in terms of the HAS division or devices. Thirdly, the recent innovations to improve hospital efficiency. What we mean by this is that right now there's a lot of overcapacity in terms of the hospital beds, and this is something that we do see of concern. Our strategy for McKesson is three-pronged, and it is to integrate, penetrate, and cultivate. And through this strategy, McKesson will be able to grow revenues by 70% and also increase profits by 20% by the year 2020. Let's take a look further at the Ascent relationship. We see that Francisco Partners having the majority stake with 3 board members on the Ascent company, and you right now have that exclusivity agreement with them for Canadian distribution. Some potential adverse changes that we do see is that this exclusivity deal may be having a potential of not being renewed. This is particularly because the ownership of the private equity firm, Francisco Partners, they may want to be looking at their bottom line or wanting to sell a company or gain some cash real quick. So there is the uncertainty of not being able to renew that exclusivity for next year, or in 3 years' time. Next, Francisco Partners, if they may be giving you a deal, they may be looking at pricing pressures put on your company to be able to increase a set sale price for your company. So these are things that we would like to take into consideration. Now, moving forward to more external factors, it would be opportunities available in Western Canada. We see that the penetration in the market is low in the West at 23%, but there is opportunity, particularly beginning with Alberta, because their growth is at twice the national average at nearly 4%. So this is an area that we like to look into. But aside from opportunity in Western Canada, there is concern nationwide, and this is pertaining to the overflowing hospitals. So for example, a patient that goes into the hospital, they may spend up to nearly 14 hours waiting before they get a hospital bed. There's also chronic disease patients that have a 40% chance of readmission. Now this turns into the 15% of bed blockers that are in hospitals. These are patients who are in beds, and this could be prevented if they were given preventative measures. And this is of primary concern because this would be able to reduce the hospital costs if we were able to help chronic disease patients. And this would also help with the wait times for people waiting for acute care. Now, taking a look at the aging population in Canada, we see that by the year 2050, nearly 1/4 of all citizens will be over 65 years old. And there's the aging baby boomer population that's showing an increased need for healthcare. And also, lastly, the increased life expectancy, which leads to the increase in chronic diseases, which can be increasing stress on hospitals because of the overflowing capacity. Now, further looking into chronic diseases, we see that 60% of Canadians over the age of 20 have chronic disease. What's a more important figure, looking at the graph, is that it is increasing at a rate for chronic disease at 14% per year for the next 25 years. Now, we have identified some of the trends in the market and also showing you some of the analysis that we have conducted. We would like to move on with assessing the alternatives that we have identified against the key criteria that was provided to us from your executives. So with the first criteria on your left-hand side, you'll see the double-digit revenue growth, and this is of utmost importance as expressed by McKesson executives. Second, patient safety, of utmost importance to the government, because this is what they prioritize. Thirdly, diversifying your revenue streams to have a reduced dependence on very limited suppliers that you have. And fourthly, there's always a need to improve costs as well as efficiency for any type of operation. Lastly, you want to maintain that healthcare leadership in the market. So we have assessed various alternatives and have chosen 3 for McKesson to pursue. Firstly, vertical integration. Secondly, expansion to the West. And thirdly, home care and remote patient monitoring. And now I'll pass it off to Devin to discuss our strategy.
Thank you, Devin. So our strategy has 3 prongs to it: integrate, penetrate, and cultivate. The integrate strategy is all about reducing our dependence on our supplier relationships currently. The penetrate strategy is all about expanding to the Western Canadian market, and the cultivate strategy is about continuing McKesson's leadership in the healthcare market as a powerhouse through innovation in the home care market. So I'm going to walk you through the integrate strategy, Poon will walk you through the penetrate strategy, and then Shilpa will finish with the cultivate strategy. So let's dive right in. So like I said, the integrate strategy is all about reducing our current supplier relationships. Right now with Ascent, we feel that McKesson is too dependent on Ascent as they supply the massive majority of HAS Division's products. So that gives them a lot of supplier and bargaining power in negotiations, and partnering that with the adverse possible relationship moving forward, we wanted to manage that risk exposure moving forward. So we believe that McKesson should, firstly, form a partnership with one of Ascent's competitors for the remaining years of the contract. Second, we believe that McKesson should acquire that competitor when Ascent's contract ends in 2019. The first part, we believe, really is going to allow us to diversify our product offering and expand our customer base, allowing for long-term sustainability. And the second part, and that would be a short to medium term. The second part would be more medium to long term, and we believe that's going to allow us to vertically integrate and really control our supply chain. So we've identified Swisslog's Healthcare Solutions Division to be our target for this strategy, and we believe they would be the right company to do this with because they have very complementary products to what the HAS division currently offers. They have pharmacy automation products that are very similar to what we currently source from ASIN. They also have material handling and transport automation products as well as nursing automation products. So as you can see by this graph, Swisslog's North American healthcare revenue has been decreasing the past few years. And this is largely due to adverse effects from Obamacare that they've been experiencing in their US operations so far. We think that this allows for a great opportunity for a partnership with McKesson and Swisslog in their Canadian arm, and possibly even incentivize an acquisition later on in the future. So looking into our partnership, we plan for it to be a 3-year contract that goes as long as our current ASIN sourcing contract is. Now, we are aware that we have an exclusive agreement with ASIN and that we cannot do any products that ASIN currently offers, any complementary or similar products. So we thought we would we thought we would source only material handling and transport products from Swisslog for this 3-year partnership only. And we believe that Swisslog would really be interested in partnering us because, like I said, McKesson Canada is a great North American powerhouse in healthcare, and we'd be a great person to partner with. So looking at our acquisition, we projected out Swisslog's EBITDA for the next few years and came up with a multiple of 11.5 times, which gave us a valuation of $87 million. We believe that this would be a very feasible acquisition. $87 million only represents 1.6% of McKesson Corporate's current cash balance. And we know that there's precedent for McKesson Corporate going out and doing an acquisition for its Canadian arm. It's been done before and at much larger scales. So we definitely think that this can be financed totally by cash. And so we'd have an ROI of 14%. And we really like this part of the strategy because we think it allows McKesson to vertically integrate and get higher margins, as we're not going to be a reseller anymore, and also control supply and our supply chain. It also allows us to diversify our product offering and expand our customer base. So looking at the financial impact of this part of the strategy, we see a 6.5% year-over-year average revenue growth. And as you can see on this graph, the integrated strategy outperforms our projected management base case revenues for the next 6 years. So we definitely think this is a financially feasible and viable solution, and we think it'll be very successful moving forward. So now I'm going to hand it off to Poon, who's going to talk about the penetrate strategy.
Thank you, David. So now that the company has become more vertically integrated, and it's now time for us to move forward in order to capture the growth opportunity in other regions. So let me bring your attention to the screen. The Canadian healthcare industry has been growing at 2%, and the main driver of this is from the western part of Canada, in which we have a very low penetration rate in. Therefore, this is a right time for us to get into the region and exploit this opportunity. So the next question that needs to be answered is, where exactly is our opportunity? So we take a look at different regions across Western Canada and we evaluate them with different criteria, being the healthcare growth, healthcare spending per capita, and also intensity of competition. So from here we can see that Alberta and British Columbia are ranked first in terms of attractiveness. So what this means for you, Mackenzie, is that we should enter Alberta and also British Columbia in order to capitalize on the growing opportunity in the HAS market. So moving forward, for the implementation or action plan, nothing says it better than the case study. So we have done some research and found that there's a strong proof of demand that the largest hospital in Calgary is interested in adopting the automated dispensing cabinet for the use in Alberta. So what this means for Mackenzie, Canada is that it's a large market opportunity. So in order to penetrate into this region, it's important we can contact the right person, and that would be Alberta Health Service. And through them, we can talk to the vendor relation office, who's going to be facilitating with all the contracting, supply chain management, and also procurement. So after the approval of the request, then purchase order and also the invoices would be initiated as a guideline for further discussion with other potential vendors. So in order to create or ensure the successful relationship between the two parties, it's very important that both parties, Mackenzie Canada and also Alberta Health Service, can extract the mutual benefit or mutual interest out of the deal. So there are three mutual strategic goals to this, and these are quality, access, and sustainability. So for quality, AHS is prioritizing on the patient safety in the treatments, and in return, we can leverage on our market experience of over 100 years. So next, for the access, AHS is looking for the secure and real-time reporting line, and in return, we have a right product for that, which is the Click Connect, our vertically integrated online platform that allows the patient to see any updates to that. And lastly, for sustainability, AHS is looking for someone who can ensure the resource optimization for them. And since we are Mackenzie, who is continuously investing in the innovative technology, it is very likely that they would see us as a potential partner. So after implementing all of these, Mackenzie Canada would be able to grow its revenue stream, and the projected revenue growth in CAGR stands at 40%. The net present value is about roughly 20 million, and the incremental cost will come hand in hand with the incremental revenue. And the two main costs would be attributable for the cost of new warehouse and also the annual wage expenses. And on the non-financial side, we will be targeting additional 13 hospitals in the British Columbia and also Alberta by the end of year 2016. So what this means for our patients is they're going to have the increased accessibility as well as the proximity to us. So for this moment, allow me to pass the floor on to Shilpa, who's going to be covering the cultivate strategies.
Thank you, Pooh. So Pooh and I really focus on leveraging McKesson's current product portfolio. I'm going to be walking you through our third prong, cultivate, which shifts gears and really helps McKesson capitalize on innovation and expand their product portfolio. So as Nick mentioned, an important trend in Canada right now is the aging baby boomer population and the resulting increase in chronic disease incidence. This is going to increase the admittance at hospitals, which will result in higher wait times and eventually translate into higher costs for the hospitals. Thus, there really is a huge opportunity to improve hospital efficiency by clearing patient beds. One of the opportunities we identified was remote patient monitoring. This is a way by which hospitals can discharge patients but continue monitoring them from their home. That reduces costs for hospitals because they're no longer having the patient in the bed, but they can still check up on them. Now, historically, this area has been growing tremendously by about 15 to 20%, but it's really expected to explode in the coming years, where the CAGR is predicted to be 35%. So we really believe this is a good area for McKesson to take advantage of. Now, our recommendation is going to be in 3 parts. First, identify potential programs that do RPM currently in Canada and evaluate them. The second would be to actually form contracts with at most 1 program in each province. And the third would be to acquire 1 program so McKesson can expand on the RPM opportunity. But first, let's talk about why this is an important recommendation. There was a case study done in Montreal on patients using home monitoring that showed that not only are cost savings greater than $600 per patient per year, but also there's a reduction in number of patients visiting the ER and a reduction in number of hospital overnight stays. So this approach has been validated even though it's relatively new, and it shows the benefit to hospitals. So let's go into the first aspect of our approach, is to evaluate the current programs for RPMs. Now, these programs are pilots. It is a relatively new technology, so we didn't think it would be that helpful for us to evaluate it because it's a very high-touch program. You need to see the technology, you need to talk to patients, but we did want to provide criteria for McKesson to go about doing so immediately. And our 3 criteria are reach, experience, and cost. There are RPM programs in over than 20% of the hospitals in Canada, so we really think that McKesson can take action on this immediately. Now the second part, after evaluating these programs, we think McKesson should contract with at most 1 program in each province. Since these are still pilots, they are very localized. They don't have the national reach that McKesson does. But knowing that McKesson is a national company, we wanted to provide a way that you can leverage local expertise but still reach national scale. And thus, we think a contract would be the best idea. We do think that exclusivity, regional exclusivity would be required so that programs don't feel like they're partnering with McKesson while also competing with other people, but we do think it's a very possible recommendation. Additionally, after actually contracting with these programs for about 2 years, we recommend acquiring one of them. And the reason is these programs are highly dependent on the technology that they provide, and so there is intellectual property in that, and competitive advantages do come from that technology. And so it is good to bring it under the McKesson banner. Now, we did a valuation of an average company in this industry right now, and we came to a final valuation of 7.8 million Canadian US dollars. Given the amount of cash that McKesson has, we think this is a very affordable evaluation, and also would be a way for McKesson to get in on the ground floor of a really revolutionizing area in hospital healthcare. Let's take a look at the overall impact of our strategy on finances. We have projected 3 cases, bull, bear, and base. And in both, you see the double-digit growth in revenue and profits, which really achieves the goal that we set out at the beginning. This financially validates our strategy. Of course, there are always implementation details that need to be taken care of. We've laid out an implementation timeline for McKesson to follow. As you can see, all 3 strategies would be implemented along the same timeline, but we recommend that really focusing on integrate and penetrate in the short to medium term, and focusing on cultivate in the medium to long term, because it is a developing technology and would take time to roll out. Now let's go over the journey that brought us here. So in the beginning, Nick identified the objective that we wanted to achieve, which was achieving double-digit growth for McKesson in Canada. Our considerations that we identified were first, an unclear future with Ascent. And our strategy of integrate provides supplier freedom for McKesson, which mitigates this risk. The second key consideration was that there was under-penetration in Western Canada. And our prong of penetrate enables McKesson to really capitalize on these high-growth areas to supplement that double-digit growth that we want. And the last prong of cultivate allows McKesson to really improve hospital operations, thus addressing the key consideration of hospital inefficiency. And thus, our 3-pronged strategy of integrate, penetrate, and cultivate really does achieve McKesson's overall growth while taking advantage of and considering any environmental trends. Thank you.
With respect to your integrate strategy and partnering with the competitor of Ascent, I'm just wondering if you've taken into consideration your cost-benefit analysis, the cost to the customer, because they have a current infrastructure set up. They would have to retrain their personnel, perhaps. I would imagine they're different machines. So can you elaborate on that, or have you taken that into consideration?
So if I'm right, you're asking how is like training everybody, what like changes made in a move, how do we do that moving forward? So I would probably say that while that is a consideration to be made, having a partnership in the start, if we were to partner right now or in, let's say, the next year, and then soon acquire them, that would allow for more of a transition into that. It would take a little while, but the partnership would allow us to get a feel for what their company is like, and then eventually, and we might have an idea of how we might want to do this moving forward, so we might be able to prepare for that acquisition. So it would hopefully be more of a smooth transition in.
And just to add on specifically how we did our finances, so we modeled a similar margin to what McKesson or HAS currently gets. And I think that implies that the training would be inbuilt, and also if we transition it slowly, it may not be as significant of an upfront cost.
On the same topic, have you evaluated the option to buy Ascent?
We did. So we thought it made more sense to either, and we thought it was actually a really interesting idea because we only sold them a couple years ago. But we thought it might be better to move on to a different competitor who might have a more diversified product base, which is why we thought that it might be a good idea to go with Swisslog instead of Ascent.
And I think more importantly, Ascent also still has that private equity risk, which is one of the reasons we suggested initially to do a partnership with someone else and eventually acquire that other person. And so that risk would we think put pressure on it, McKesson.
Okay.
With the history of acquisitions have typically been with other distributors also, so do you feel like although there is a history of acquisition, there is any potential risk in venturing into acquisitions of kind of being more vertically integrated? And I might be wrong from the perspective of McKesson.
So we have also come up with a different risk. The first being that like the partnership might not be successfully executed just because Swisslog might not want us as their partnership, but we also have a lot of other potential partners where we can also target, and we also have some different risks if that might interest you. We are also willing to discuss that later. And also for the low customer adoption, like the cost of customers, we are also, since we have a potential, since we are very large in terms of corporate, so we can leverage highly on our cost structure being from the economy of scale. So by that we can also like attract more customers among other competitors.
And just to add on to that, just weighing it in a cost benefit analysis kind of, I think we were kind of thinking down the line that the diversification we got from this possible acquisition plus that vertical integration justifies actually going back and acquiring a company like this. So that was kind of our line of thinking, and that's why we decided to do that.
Is the, am I right, the assumed acquisition price, are we saying 87?
87 million, yeah.
Okay, that's their, the 2018 number is their projected EBITDA number?
Yes.
For Swisslog?
Yes.
A couple of real quick questions about the financials, and one just off of that. You had, I think, 11.5 times multiple. Where'd that come from?
Sure. So we looked at a few industry reports of healthcare and technology to figure out the reasonable multiple, and obviously that's a very broad area. So we found multiples ranging from about 10 times to 25 times. That being said, the 25 times were definitely for software healthcare companies, which generally trade at a premium, and hardware is generally at a discount. So we thought we'd go at the lower end of that range. It is a little higher because we wanted to build in a slight premium in case that came up in the acquisition.
Okay, good. And just the other sort of financial question, with regards to the Cultivate strategy, you talked about some numbers that from now to 2018, the CAGR was going to grow to 35%. and would represent a $26 billion market. Is that Canada? Is that, I mean, that's a huge number.
It's
in my
a
mind.
North American market.
North
actually.
America, okay.
But it has really penetrated Canada at a very high level. Like we said, it's already in 20% of Canadian hospitals. So we assume that the growth was probably also going to be similar in Canada, very proportionate. So.
Okay.
What are the revenues that are associated with that in your, for Canada, on the cultivate strategy? Do you have the numbers, the revenues that we would generate?
Right there. No.
The numbers behind there, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go, okay.
So the way we projected out the revenue associated with this, so are you talking for the valuation or just for, like, once you acquire the company, the revenue?
The revenues that we would
Top line?
make from
Top
that
line,
side.
okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
top line.
So what we were
Strictly
thinking
top
was, the way these are usually sold is like in a package. So like a package for patients to take home with devices that would help them monitor their health. And so we had to estimate the price of the package. That was a little bit of a rough estimate. There isn't really anything out there right now because they're pilot programs, so they don't charge for anything. But what we found that a reasonable estimate was $2,000 based on a report we had read. And then to estimate the quantity, we took the number of patients that are currently enrolled in an average program based on a research report, and then grew it by the CAGR of the industry, which was 15%. So we weren't going for the 35%, a little conservative. And so that's where you see right here the price and the quantity, and just multiply to get the revenue.
And we kind of decided to do RPM like this instead of a possible other really innovative strategy, because we wanted to really try to be the first mover there. So that was kind of our thing.
Okay. On the penetrate strategy, if we have time.
Yes.
So I understand that it's about targeting Alberta and BC. I've seen on one slide talking about buying a warehouse. Am I missing something? So is it?
No, it is definitely correct in terms of that, and we're looking in Calgary, particularly in the mainland Manchester as well as Bolingbrook area, because this is the majority area in terms of industrial warehousing in the Calgary region, and we do see this as the primary location, and it would be roughly about 3.5 million.
So it would be basically extending our offering. It would be our offering, selling the same automation gear, but you would implement. I just want to make sure I'm not missing. Are you adding a service component to our current offering for justifying to buy a facility or something? I just want to make sure I'm
This
clear.
would be for the increased capacity, because we're going to be trying to penetrate Alberta as well as BC by 2016, which would ideally reach about 13 hospitals.
So it's not about additional logistic services or whatever. Okay.
No. We were just trying to be as conservative as possible.
Fair enough. I just
That's
wanted
what
to
we
make sure I
also
didn't miss anything.
Last question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.